Most of you are very familiar with my arcade port series, where I compare different versions of the same game, generally establishing the very best version next to the arcade game itself. So, what about those very awesome arcade games that didn't get any ports at all, but was rather left in the arcade and totally forgotten about? As we know, the 1980s and even into the 2000s had some absolutely terrible ports for the 8-bit and 16-bit systems of the time, as well as some that were even considered as better than the arcade game that they were actually being ported from. Today we are looking at some of the very best games that are currently stuck as arcade exclusives and never seen a release outside of that sweaty joystick environment. Many games eventually got a home version, even if it did take over 25 years of doing so. But these games in this video have been recorded in this video been completely left behind. And as you watch this video, you'll likely agree and question why this was. We have some top quality releases to go through today from the likes of Konami and IREM, a mixture of shoot 'em ups, beat 'em ups, and even games which fuse different genres of arcades together to create an entirely different new experience of arcades gaming. Before I begin this video, this will be the first part of a series, and so anything that isn't in this video will likely be in subsequent episodes. We'll kick this off today then with a game that would have likely been suited for a console like the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. Anybody who knows the awesome job that the 16-bit Sega console did with most horizontal shoot 'em ups will know exactly what I mean there. Cosmic Cop was produced by IREM in 1991, the same people who actually graced the world with the awesome R-Type games. And talking about R-Type, well, Cosmic Cop is actually a part of that universe too. In this game, we fly the R-Type fighter, which is R11B Peacemaker. Cosmic Cop has also had several references made over the years with some of the R-Type games, and we can even play as the Peacemaker in the R-Type final game. So, back to Cosmic Cop then. This is a seriously hardcore shoot 'em up, but what makes this very different from most games of this genre is the fact that instead of travelling at one constant speed, we can actually control how fast we move when moving left or right with the joystick. The aim of the game then is to actually hunt down and destroy autonomous vehicles which are causing havoc. The game particularly gets challenging later on in the game when the stages begin to be a case of flying upwards and downwards through shafts and tunnels, as well as shooting down things to prevent us from crashing into things such as sewage. Like I say, it's very unusual that this game never seen the light of day outside of the arcade, and especially since it is linked to the R-Type franchise. Possibly one of the most underrated beat-em-up games that was ever produced by Konami. Violent Storm released back in 1993, and this is such a fun beat-em-up game to play. It's a beat-em-up game of light-hearted violence which doesn't really take itself too seriously. I mean, in this game we can actually collect teddy bears to give us points as we are fighting through the masses of baddies. Violent Storm is set in a world where a fictional World War III is now ended, and just as humanity is pulling itself back together again, gangs are now causing havoc, and so three protagonists being Wade, Boris and Kyle have come to save the day. Now obviously, if you're a fan of games like Final Fight, then Violent Storm will be right up your street. Although games in this genre were done to death at this point, this game brings something a little different. Instead of the usual gritty and dark settings of beat 'em up games, this game almost looks intentionally designed like a cartoon to some degree, with its very pale pastel-like colours used. This was originally a 3-player simultaneous game, and we have all the typical stage themes here, such as the declined town, a runaway train level, and many more. There are 7 stages in total, with a boss waiting for you at the end of each. Violent Storm isn't the toughest beat-em-up game ever made, but it's a lot of fun to play whilst it lasts. Very strange how this game was never ported at all. The time of this release being 1993 would have fit nicely on, say, the Super Nintendo. This 1993 Sammy Corporation release is one of the best run and gun games around, which features amazing visuals and awesome gameplay. It's set in the year 2993 and is pretty much a story of a space-time patroller who is chasing after a criminal known as Gustav. We end up travelling through a time warp and hence the prehistoric dinosaur theme of the game. The reason then that so many dinosaurs are here attacking you is that Gustav is actually upset them as he's crash landed onto this planet. It's a fairly sizable game for an arcade release, in which would likely take around 35 minutes to finish it. The game doesn't really get monotonous in gameplay, it just seems joyful to play, and smacking into dinosaurs and collecting massive coins that they sometimes drop all feels very fresh. Sure, this style of game can be found in several more popular titles, but to have a game where dinosaurs are predominantly your enemy is obviously a win-win situation for fans of, say, Jurassic Park or even the Flintstones. Again, just like Violent Storm, Dino Gears seems very much well suited for a console like the Super Nintendo for the year of its release too. I would also say that the Super Nintendo could have really brought out the colours if this was given a chance for a home conversion. Seriously, give Dino Gears a whirl, it's a superb game and even features a co-op mode too. I kinda look at Vendetta as Konami's answer to Streets of Rage, and since this game released in 1991 and to date remains an arcade exclusive, there are a number of things with this release that Streets of Rage fans should totally enjoy. Instead of using over-the-top special moves or cartoony visuals in games such as Violent Storm, then Vendetta is a little bit more realistic and certainly involves some awesome attack moves here. The game even opens up like a Streets of Rage game. It's of course the generic storyline where a girl has been kidnapped, but to be fair, who really wasn't used in this storyline? The 1980s seen plenty of this. The game Vigilante comes straight to mind. So, some superb moves in this game can be unleashed on baddies, such as attacking enemies from the ground if you've been kicked over. We even get to smash enemies against walls here, which looks pretty awesome. We have standard flying kicks and punches, but everything here seems very slick and extremely detailed, and it kind of feels like every enemy you have attacked and defeated is a victorious win, rather than beating up hordes of enemies and then totally forgotten about. This game is so cool. You can even kick enemies off bridges here too, and even beat them whilst they're on the floor. We get to choose from 4 Cobra Gang members to play the game, and of course we can even play as a co-op game. Some random info for you, but on Vendetta's release, outside of its Asian market, it actually underwent some changes, such as enemies dressed in leathers in the style of S&M and humping and licking things. I don't think the west of the world wanted children being exposed to this type of thing back in 1991. If you want to play a modern version of Vendetta, check out the heavily inspired 2022 game, which is Final Vendetta. Outside of the arcades, this is likely the closest you will actually get to this 1991 game. Outside of all those classic and iconic Capcom arcade games that pretty much had home conversions such as Street Fighter, Final Fight, UN Squadron and many more, Eco Fighters, which released in 1994, largely got forgotten about. I really have no idea why. It is a quality horizontal shoot 'em up which does things a little different than most space-based background games in the genre. I wouldn't necessarily go as far to say that Eco Fighters is a cute 'em up game, but it definitely has a cutesy thing about it, and most definitely a game for people who love bright colours. Something else which is slightly different from the run-of-the-mill hate shooter is that we have control over where we are shooting. We have a separate button to aim our rotating weapon in order to shoot anywhere we like. Sure, it is a little learning curve there, but once you have gotten to grips with it, it's an effective and almost refreshing shoot 'em up game to play. The very name and very theme of the game being pollution based all rings home to Capcom, who at the time time was potentially attempting to tell kids that polluting the environment is bad, and so let's make a game for it to promote this. Regardless of the intention, Eco Fighters is a seriously underrated shoot 'em up which looks a little like Mega Man places, especially with the scientist who gives us a little storyline through the game. The reason that similarity actually exists is that the same team of developers behind Mega Man Power Battle and also Mega Man Power Fighters also developed this game. If you are unfamiliar with Ninja Baseball Batman, which released in 1993 by IREM, you have dearly missed out. As you can see from the gameplay, this is a beat-em up with a difference. A completely mad idea of a beat-em up game that is likely one of the most enjoyable games in the genre to play. Even the storyline is different from the average one with Ninja Baseball Batman. In this game, our mission is to retrieve various artifacts which have been stolen from the Baseball Hall of Fame, which were taken by the enemy. The storyline actually, if at all, reminds me of the game Soccer Kid, or also known as Adventures of Kid Fleets, and that likely is the closest parallel to my knowledge with this storyline. The idea actually came from the creator of the game, who was reading of the success of both Turtles and Batman films at the time and wanted to create his own superhero style game, and thus Ninja Baseball Batman was born. The baseball beam was actually incorporated as he was a big baseball fan too. We can play the game with up to 4 players simultaneously, with the choice of 4 characters to play, each with their own abilities, and smacking random sprites that appear on screen, such as gigantic aeroplanes, which kind of looks like something from some kid's cartoon, feels good, and that sound of the bat whacking sounds incredible. Really feels like you are whacking with some force. It's a seriously creative and super fun beat 'em up game to play, and it's only very recently that people have become very aware of this game. Sadly though, this IREM classic beat 'em up game was actually lost to the arcade, but who knows, someday we could get a re-release for this, or at least a remaster. I actually featured Alien Free the Gun in one of my best move of the game tie-in videos, and just had to mention it here because it's just too awesome. And to date, this 1993 Sega arcade exclusive baffles so many people as to why it was never ported to likely what could have been done perfectly for the Sega Saturn or even original PlayStation, which was of course to unleash onto the world soon after this game actually released. It's a quality on the rail shooter, and regardless if you love Aliens or dislike it, it's a solid shoot 'em up which fans of earlier games in this genre, such as Base Gun, should adore. This makes a superb co-op game as we scroll across alien-inspired themed stages, shooting down xenomorphs, sentry guns, and even tanks. We have several bombs which we can use throughout each stage, which are limited of course, and these can be very useful to destroy everything on screen in one go when it gets too hectic, which can happen a lot. We can find upgrades throughout the game to change to flamethrowers and even more. It's truly one of the best rail shooters of the 90s, undoubtedly that is. Sure, the game doesn't exactly tie in too well with the film premise itself. You can hear why in the best move of the game tie-ins video for that. But it doesn't matter, at the end of the day, arcade games were designed for a quick blast of action. The only way I could describe Mystic Warriors or even compare it with another game would possibly be Shinobi, but this isn't a game about rescuing people in order to move on to the next stage. For anybody familiar with Shinobi, you will kind of see where I'm coming from with this Konami 1993 release. You also see through the gameplay similarities with the very awesome Sunset Riders. Mystic Warriors was actually produced by the same team, to the point that during the first stage of the game, you will see a massive advertisement of Sunset Riders itself. So what is Mystic Warriors about then? Well, we have a bright and colourful bunch of ninjas to choose from to play a game, or up to 4 players in a co-op mode. We can slice and dice as well as fire shurikens at enemies as they head our way. upgrade our weapons with collectibles which are scattered around, and take on some bosses. So nothing actually particularly unique about Mystic Warriors, as most of these things has already been done in the past. But this particular game is a good one, and it's also not too overloaded with immense difficulty levels, but rather a medium difficulty level with totally enjoyable gameplay too. Its storyline is the age-old story about dystopian New York being overrun by gangs. Like I said, nothing which hasn't been done before, but damn, this game is good and it's likely slipped under the radar for many people watching this video. To my knowledge, this game has never been ported to anything, and it's a classic example of what Konami could do with some of its quality, lesser known games like this one. There is a total of 9 stages and a boss awaits you at the end of each. Shinobi and Sunset Rider fans should totally check this game out. Talking about games that don't take themselves too seriously, this is the incredible Boogie Wings, which Data East released in 1992. It probably takes itself just as seriously as Parodius, although not that silly in all honesty. What makes and sets Boogie Wings apart from other scrolling shoot-em-ups is the fact that we can actually leave vehicles in this game, or when they are destroyed we can actually continue shooting on foot, which is pretty much just as effective as using vehicles. We can pick up random objects whilst in flying vehicles, such as aeroplanes, in order to chuck them at enemies and destroy them, although the bombs are most effective for blowing things up. We even have parts of the game where we literally have to abandon any vehicle in order to get through the stage on foot, so almost a hybrid of a horizontal scroll shoot 'em up fused with a running gun style game here. The game has a steampunk look about it, something similar to the Chaos engine, and it all works really well too. It is set during the 1930s World War I era and has extremely detailed visuals which are very intricate in places too. We can also play this game in a co-op mode too if you have another person wanting to play it with you. After completing the first stage, we are then presented with a choice of different missions to undertake, which offers us a slightly non-linear experience of the run-of-the-mill horizontal shooters. Boogie Wings is definitely an innovative game which tries and succeeds in experimenting with other elements of gameplay. Going back to the Parodius analogy, we even have a Santa Claus mission here, which is just ridiculous, especially when it comes to a robotic Santa Claus boss that we have to take down. This game is notoriously known to never have had a home conversion. I am convinced that the Sega Mega Drive could have handled this game really well too. Such a shame this game was lost to the arcade. To be honest with you, I have no idea of the kids' 1992 animated series known as Wild West Cowboys and Moomeza. I have a good memory of this era, and I was heavily into cartoons such as Turtles, DuckTales, Chip and Dale, and even the Raccoons, and many more. I am guessing this American cartoon never made it to the UK, or it was on cable TV, at which point we didn't have cable at the time. But nevertheless, here we have an awesome and extremely Sunset Riders inspired side-scrolling running gun game by Konami. Granted, it's nowhere near as perfect as Sunset Riders and a little more childlike looking, but of course it had to be because it was based on the kids' TV show. If you have never heard of the cartoon series, then welcome to the club. For those who remember it, I am sure I sound very stupid here. The creator of Moomeza worked very closely with Konami at the time to ensure the arcade's game reflected the show, and was by all accounts really well praised at the time of its release. As you will see in the gameplay, it pretty much looks like Sunset Riders, and even the character selection screen is on par too. So if you fancy some Wild West action and an easier version of, say, Sunset Riders, then Wild West COW Boys and Moomeza is the game to play. And that's it for today's video. So did you necessarily agree with these top picks in this video? Have you missed any of these games at all covering this today's video. Which game is brand new to you that you wasn't aware of? Anyways, drop a comment in the comments section, and if you're new to my channel, then check out those arcade ports videos I talked about at the introduction of today's video. Anyways, until next time, thanks for watching.